So over here on the upper level branch line, there's a few things that I have to do before I start the actual construction of the mountain backdrops. The first thing here is I need to build a contoured version of what the hill is going to look like out of some masonite hardboard to help support the actual cardboard webbing framework that I use to construct the mountains. And while it's not going to be structural per se, it's just going to add an extra little thing that these hills can grab onto, and that allows me to go up a little bit higher in terms of what the hill will actually look like versus having to bring it back down before the back or the end of the bench work here. So I'm going to start with that. We're going to build the fascia board essentially is what it's going to be for the hill contour, and then we'll start building the rest of the mountains themselves out of the cardboard webbing. I start off by measuring roughly how tall I want the hillside to be and what I think will look good for the scene. From there I roughly cut some insulation foam board to give me a better idea as to the height and what exactly it will look like. Next, I measure the 3 strips of fascia that will be required for this job. I use a skill saw to rip down 2 thin strips and a third much wider piece, which I'll eventually use for the backside support and fascia board for the hill that I will be building. These pieces will eventually create a finished look from outside of the window if you're looking up into the layout room. Next, I trim down these pieces on the chop saw, and then I test fit them on the layout to ensure that they fit comfortably. For the hillside, I clamp the fascia board in place, prop up the rough foam pieces that I cut earlier on in this video, giving me a better visualization of what the hill will actually look like. Once I'm happy with the height of the slope, I then trace the hill contour on the fascia board. Now that I've traced a visual representation of what the hill dimensions will be, I take the fascia board back down to the shop, and using a jigsaw, I trim the fascia board following the contour I traced earlier. Here I am adding a coat of black paint to give the fascia board a more finished appearance when it is mounted to the back side of the benchwork. And now that the paint's dry, it's time to install it on the layout. Cut that shorter, and now we're going to install the fascia board. To install the fascia board, I use this product here, LePage PL Premium. It's an excellent adhesive. It's super strong. I used it to secure the foam to the wood benchwork. I also used it to secure the fascia board to the front of the layout. Overall, just a super strong product. I even used it to add a little additional shelf down by the pulp mill to extend the layout a little bit, and that whole section is held up with this stuff. It's super strong. Swear by it. I know a bunch of other people use it. So we're going to use this to run along the bottom of the fascia board here, and then we're just going to clamp it using a few little clamps such as these. It doesn't need to be clamped perfectly straight because you're really not going to be able to see it. Again, this fascia board is only there for visual appeal while also providing, at least for this section of the branch line here, it'll also support your sub-scenery. The other 2 pieces that we're going to install further down the layout are simply visual appeal only, so it's not going to be important that they're 100% flat or laser straight. So let's go ahead here. We'll get this bottle of PL Premium open, and then we'll go ahead and install this. the good thing about this stuff is it's super tacky, so you don't, especially for the support, I'm not even gonna clamp it. I'm just gonna let it dry, pressure fit on both the side and the bottom. Because like I said, it dries super strong, and it would be more than enough for this application. So just a little bit on the front, a little bit on the bottom, and I'm just gonna stick it down there. You can see I cut a little hole out of the foam so that I can glue it straight to the bench work, and then I'm just going to pressure fit this little support in place, just like that. All right, so that is done. Looks like it's adhering all right. Yeah, no issues there. It's adhered, and I'm just gonna let it dry. I may throw some weight up against there just to keep it from expanding, but I'm not gonna push it too much. That way I don't push the bench work or the fascia away from the layout. So that weight's just there to keep it secure, and let's move on to the next one. Now that the fascia is installed, it's time to move forward with the sub-scenery. For these next steps, you will require a box cutter, scissors, a hot glue gun, preferably one with a high and low heat setting, and some foam. It's not particularly important what foam you use, however I found that I've had the best luck with your typical blue and pink insulation foam board. The foam will eventually be used as added support for when we install the cardboard webbing at a later time. I start by cutting the foam board to the desired slope contour and glue it to the fascia board as seen here, spacing them roughly 8 to 10 inches apart. This will provide ample support when we install the cardboard webbing. For this particular scene, I decided to add a country road, and I simply use a piece of cardboard as a base layer for future road work down the line. Haven't quite decided what I will use for that road material, however, the cardboard is more than enough to support the plaster and any other methods that I decide to use. Recycled cardboard from just my old workplace. I just developed a large stockpile of it because I knew I'd be needing it. Most cardboard you're going to be using, unless you're using a cereal box, which I also don't recommend because it's not that, it's too thin of a cardboard. Most of the cardboard is going to be corrugated, meaning it has levels to it. You can see the corrugation in there. Which is great for, you know, your shipping boxes and anything else that goes in a box because it keeps it safe. But what the issue with that in this application is that it's rigid, and you need to be able to form it to the contour that you're going after. So in order to accomplish that, I mean, you could do this in like 100 different ways, but usually I found that it was easiest to cut the cardboard strips as is and then just break them down as you go, and just crushing that corrugation on the inside of the cardboard so that the cardboard is a little bit more malleable for gluing it to the foam subscenery. So I'm going to go ahead and break down. You can see I've already broke down a few different lengths of cardboard, and we're going to go ahead here and get started pretty quickly with gluing the cardboard webbing in place. Earlier that I use a hot glue gun with both a high and low setting. I don't often use the high setting for this application as it will melt the foam board, making it difficult for the cardboard to adhere to the foam, and ultimately it just ends up making a bigger mess. I start with the vertical pieces of the cardboard, which I install between each foam support. Then I use a T-pin to temporarily tack the cardboard in place. You can use a T-pin like I'm using, which you can find pretty much in the arts and crafts store, but ultimately you can decide what type of pin you use, finishing nails, thumbtacks, etc. They will all work and accomplish the same goal. Once the vertical cardboard strips are in place, I take the horizontal strips, which are often cut in longer lengths, and I weave them through the vertical pieces, ensuring that I glue the cardboard together wherever it crosses. The end result should look like a woven cardboard mesh as shown here. Now that the cardboard webbing is complete, I go ahead and add a layer of brown painter's paper. I will typically work lengthwise for this step as I find it easier to mold the paper to the hill. So I start with the long edge of the paper, gluing all the way along the edge of the fascia board, and then I begin to work my way down the hillside incrementally, a few inches at a time. Once I've glued the paper down to the bottom of the hill, I use a box cutter to trace the cork road bed, cutting away all of the excess paper, revealing the track once again, and effectively completing the sub-scenery for this section. Now this step of adding the painter's paper is completely optional. I've seen some modelers use different techniques, including applying the plaster cloth directly to the cardboard webbing, and I've seen others use wire mesh instead of paper. It's completely up to you as to what material you want to use. I prefer painter's paper for the simple fact that it provides a clean, pre-scenery finished appearance, and it gives the layout a more finished appearance even without scenery, which is good in instances where the scenery will likely be applied months after the sub-scenery is complete, as is the case for my layout. So I know I've only shown a very small section of my layout, but essentially what I'll do from here is I'll rinse and repeat this exact same process to complete this scene on the branch line. And that is essentially my true and tried method of constructing sub-scenery. So you'll be able to see here kind of the progression of what the construction of the sub-scenery looks like, starting off here with the foam supports, and then over to the cardboard webbed portion of this, and then lastly the layer of painter's paper to kind of temporarily finish the scenery until you get a layer of plaster and rock carvings, etc. on top. So that's just kind of how I do my scenery, or at least the sub-scenery. Hope that answers a few questions, and I'll do probably a part 2 here in the future on how I do the plaster work as well as the rock carvings. I hope this video provided you with a better idea on how I construct sub-scenery on my layout. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below. If you like this video, feel free to give it a thumbs up, and if you're not already a subscriber, please consider subscribing for more model railroad and trackside content just like this. And as always, thanks for watching.